You have to truly believe in the magic.
What's up, Magic fans? Welcome to Penny for Your Thoughts, Orlando Magic UK's weekly podcast. Today is Saturday, the 31st of December. We've all been stuffing our faces this Christmas, and I'm joined by everyone, which I'm very happy about. Paul, how was your Christmas, mate?
Too much food, too much drink, but absolutely fantastic. We had a cracking time, mate. What about yourself?
Excellent. Yeah, very good. Kids all enjoyed themselves, which is the main thing. Had a few drinks, and yeah, it's just nice to have time off work. So, Mikey, how was things at your household?
Very good. Happy New Year, boys. Yeah, very good. Lily had like 8 Barbies and she just got spoilt, which is what Christmas is about, really. All the weight that I lost on holiday, I've now put back on. So
yeah,
it was
mate,
a good
I'm
Christmas.
I'm the same. Plus a couple of 3 pounds besides.
Yeah, that's what it's about.
Good stuff. And Gary, you keeping your lean self fit?
Yeah, not too bad actually, mate. Just low key from me as always. I like to be the understated person.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. So we've got a bit to get through this week. Obviously, Magic played a couple of games against the San Antonio Spurs, the LA Lakers, and the Detroit Pistons, and then last night, obviously, against the Washington Wizards. There's one game in particular I think we'll be talking at length about.
The Spurs.
But the Spurs.
Well, let's be fair, it won't be that Wizards game. God dear.
No, I know. Before we do that, let's just get the affiliate plug out of the way. So, as you can see, we're all sporting the new City and Statement jerseys. Paul and I have the City jerseys, and Gary and Mikey with their Statement jerseys. They're all available on NBA EU, and they are currently shipping. I think Mikey got his through the post this morning. Players available include Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, Jalen Suggs, Jonathan Isaac, Cole Anthony, and the king himself, Markel Fultz. Our affiliate code MAGICUK10 will get you 10% off your total order. Some exclusions on other items may apply. And then if you could just help us by supporting the podcast simply by subscribing to our YouTube channel, Orlando Magic UK. If you subscribe through any other platform, if you could be so kind as to just click, subscribe on YouTube, that would help us greatly. So then, the week that was, as I mentioned, we've seen 4 games since we last recorded, with us beating the San Antonio Spurs, and then following up after Christmas with two lackluster efforts really against the LA Lakers and Detroit Pistons. And then the short-handed loss against the Wizards by a score of 119-100 last night. So let's kick it off. Was it a case of too much Christmas pudding, Paul? Or is there more to those defeats?
Right, I said in the group that when you wrote this agenda, I felt like I was getting the question that's kind of, yeah, who cares? Let's get to the main event. But
we've got to touch upon them, yeah.
Yeah, we've got to. Look, let's be honest. We've been playing defence very, very poorly in the first half of recent games. We're giving up way too many points. There's been 60-point games on 3 occasions, I think. And even last night, it was in the high 50s. Can't remember the exact figure. You throw in that some of our offence hasn't been good. We've been allowing opponents to hit us on the fast break. And there's been sections of the games where we're just settling for contested shots and jacking up contested threes. Against LA and Detroit, it felt like we struggled to get out of second gear for me. We just never seemed to get that momentum going. Lakers, hate to say it, but I think experience told. They looked at LeBron. He used every ounce of experience, as did Pat Beverly, as did Schroeder. They used all their experience to get. We saw Paolo in foul trouble. He was taken out as a factor in the game. They used everything that they know through years and years of playing in this league to get their opportunities. Fair play to them. You can't fault them, really. It felt at points where they were giving lessons to many of our young guys. Then you have to throw in, unfortunately, a bit of a dip in form by Paolo. He's not been as dominant as we've seen him. I know you can take out the Lakers game to say the foul trouble. But, mate, what's happened to T. Ross? He's just doing nothing. He's providing us with nothing. And Washington was what it was, 8 players available. But we did say on the last pod that with getting players back, it would affect the rotations. We would see changes in the rotation, and that could then see problems in us getting settled. And I do think that's happened. I hope that we get some form of reaction against OKC as we start to see the suspensions being less. But the results this week for me hurt because I think all 4 games were winnable. Suspensions excluded.
Absolutely. Completely agree with you there. But, I mean, that Laker game, them playing on Christmas Day themselves, they looked up for it already, whereas our younger guys looked like they were in awe of being on the same court as LeBron James. I mean, Paolo said it was his favourite player growing up, etc. But hopefully now, when we play him again in March, I've got it marked on the calendar already, we'll be ready and we'll take the W that night. Gary, Mikey, anything to add to what Paul's...
all I would say is about Paulo, I think it's just the first time this season where he's looked like a rookie in the last few games, and that's okay. That's totally fine.
Absolutely.
He's allowed to do that, and it's going to happen. And I think it shows when his form's kind of, you could say, dipped. He's played like a rookie, but he's still been very effective and someone who teams are having to prepare for how good a campaign that he's actually been having. You know, the Lakers clearly came in with a game plan of how to try and deal with Banchero. And, you know, like, I think that says it all when they've come in and they've had to actually factor in how are we going to nullify this kid who could get 20 to 30 on us quite easily. So he's entitled to look like a rookie. Maybe he's hit a small wall. I'm sure he'll push through it and he'll just have to be coached properly. And it's the job of the coaches to do that. And the only other thing I would say is maybe it's a case of, with all the people coming back, it's nullified the presence of a couple of our real energy guys. You know, like we've seen them on the bench in street clothes and such, and maybe it's just a thing where they bring more to the team than what you see on the stat sheet, which is something we've kind of alluded to before. So maybe that's a factor as well. Don't know, but I thought we got, to be honest, thoroughly done by the Lakers, and I thought the Pistons handled us when we really shouldn't have.
Yeah, we'll move on to that one. So obviously the game with the skirmish. So just for context, I'll just read out what I've written about this for anybody who's been living under a rock and hasn't seen it yet. So obviously we played Detroit in Detroit on Wednesday night. And there was an incident where Caleb Houston tried to throw a pass to Mo Wagner. Mo Wagner had gone into our backcourt, so it was going to be called an over and back. Killian Hayes was trying to run to it. Mo Wagner hip checked him into the Detroit bench. Hayes got up and literally punched him. Diallo also was involved. He pushed Wagner as well. Wagner, in fairness to him, he just stood there and took it. It looked like he possibly got knocked out a little bit. I don't know. Nobody's really commented on any sort of concussion or anything. And then basically the Magic players rushed, to basically try and get him out because of concern for their teammates. The result is that Mo Wagner was thrown out of the game, suspended 2 games. From the Pistons, Killian Hayes received a 3-game suspension as well as being booted. Diallo with the 1 game as well as being booted that game. And then every Magic player who left the bench area has been given 1-game suspension. I'll just list off who did leave the bench. That was Cole Anthony, RJ Hampton, Gary Harris, Kevon Harris, Admiral Schofield, Franz Wagner, Mo Bamba, and Wendell Carter Jr. The only one I think that stayed there was Terrence Ross. So, Gary, I'll come to you first. What are your thoughts on the incident itself, mate?
Yeah, I know we've had a bit of a chat about this, earlier in the week, really briefly. Yeah. I think the first thing is obviously what you got was more being more. And I think we're always going to have that with Mo Wagner, and he's there. That's his role, to rile people up, to get under people's skin. And he did a Mo Wagner move. And I would say, just on the surface, and this will sound bad, but it'll come more favourable in a second. I think if you do play silly games, sometimes you get silly prizes. And I think Mo Wagner himself would know the way he plays the game. There's going to be times where people go for him, where people might swing at him, shove him, etc. And I think he probably accept that. And I can understand why Killian Hayes was upset in a game where you've got young guys running around, testosterone going, shoving, jostling, that type of thing. I'll be honest, I wouldn't have taken kindly to it to start with. So if I'm looking at it from a neutral view, I get to an extent why things happened as they did. However, I would also add that what you're dealing with here is guys who are professional athletes. Killian Hayes is 6'5", and you can't go around throwing a punch at the back of someone's head. I would have had a lot more respect for Killian Hayes, and I'm not endorsing fighting on an NBA court if he'd done it from the front rather than the back. And I don't want to see fighting at all on a court, but I understand it might happen. And I think the fallout of that, I know we'll come onto it more, but there's got to be some questions asked about how the rules are maybe being applied here. Having been in a system where you deal with a lot of testosterone and young people and lots of people, there's got to be a consistency from the league, but there's also got to be common sense. So I think there's a lot of fallout. There's a lot of talking points. I do think Mo instigated it, but to summarise, I don't think what it did in the end was good, and it shouldn't be celebrated.
Mikey?
Well, we've all obviously dissected it. We've all watched it back plenty of times and got our thoughts on what we saw unfold. We're all Magic fans. I don't think any of us are going to defend what Mo Wagner did. He clearly instigated the situation and it got on out of hand. Now, I do feel there is a little bit of the Magic were playing with frustration. We were down 19 right at the end of the first half. You started the game off well. You then got destroyed in the second quarter. And they were just out of rhythm. They weren't playing well. And obviously you had the turnover. I think Mo's just tried stepping across him, but he's obviously left a little bit too much in on him. And then obviously tempers have flared. Killian Hayes obviously hasn't reacted well. Now, I don't actually think, like, if you watch the video back, Mo sort of flopped. Now, I think if this was in front of the Magic bench, one, Killian Hayes wouldn't throw the punch. And two, I don't think Mo Wagner would have just stood there not doing anything, if that makes sense. I feel like he almost played dead. So he didn't make the situation worse a little bit. But in terms of the rules, we'll get into that in a minute, and the suspensions and the letter of the law and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it is what it is, really. Like I said, if this was on the other end of the floor, that's if this happened in the middle of the floor, I don't think everybody would have left the bench. I think from the Magic's bench players' point of view, the players that are on the floor are getting outnumbered because it's happening right in front of the Pistons bench. And obviously, I feel like all the coaches have left the bench, and I think most teams have one coach on the bench who's designated to try and hold players back to stop that happening. But obviously, everyone's left the bench and chaos has broken out. But fortunately, more than anything, I feel like everybody did a good job of not making it a worse situation, because we've seen things like this happen in Detroit before that have been a lot uglier than that happened. And then when you get everybody involved, things can get out of hand. And we saw Fultz his temper was up, Mosley's temper was up, and I think they were both just trying to get to Mo Wagner to pull him out of that situation, because he was just surrounded by Pistons coaches and players. So yeah, it was actually quite nice to see a fight. That's just me, but obviously it's not worked in our favour. But there we go.
Yeah. No. Paul watched the game a day after us because you had some friends over that night. So I think I watched it first, and I was like on the WhatsApp group said watched, and we were waiting for somebody else to say they'd watched it so I could talk to somebody about it. And it took a while that day. But Paul watched it yesterday, and as you were watching the first quarter, I think you probably had an inkling something happened, because you said this is
mate. No, seriously,
yeah.
Seriously, that's all. That was my experience of policing. That's where that came from. I'd avoided any social media and text messages for the past 2 days deliberately, because I've said before, I get up at times and it's like, woohoo, we've won. Oh, thanks for that. So no, I've deliberately now, if I haven't watched the game, I don't go. I'm avoiding everything completely. So now I've got no idea. But first off, mate, I am going to say I do think the refs have a responsibility in ultimately what transpired. I do think they have it, because inside the opening 5 minutes, you could see how physical the game was. It was a really physical game, and you've got players already jawing at one another. I'll allude it back to when I used to work in town centres on a Friday night, Saturday night. If you could feel an atmosphere, and the best thing you could do was make an early arrest on a Friday night, Saturday night, when you'd got that sort of atmosphere. You could feel if it was going. So you didn't just go. You're not saying wind somebody up, but you found that person that was being Larry, and you made an example of them. You took them in, you arrested them whilst people were sober, because that way everybody saw that you were out and about in uniform and prepared to take action, and it calmed things down. The referees should have picked up on how the game was going and started calling it more tightly. They did that once the melee had happened, and you saw in the second half, they were calling everything tight. They should have done that early in the game, and you wouldn't have been having this situation that we're now talking about. So I do think they have a responsibility. That being said, this was entirely on Mo. You can't do what he did, and he deserves his suspension as a result. Equally, if he hadn't done what he did, we'd have been perhaps talking about a different result against Washington, because we would have had more than 8 players available to play. So for me, he has to play smarter. He has to play smarter, because his one action has potentially cost us 2 games. Potentially. I will say I also get why Diallo reacted first, and I also understand why Killian Hayes reacted. Diallo was closest. He reacted instantly in pushing Mo. Hayes, clearly angry, but his behaviour, I think I described it in the group as being a snide football hooligan attack, punch from behind. Nah, no respect for your cowardly act. And he deserved a ban of more than 3 games. It's ridiculous that he only got that. I do agree with you, Mike. I think that Mo just went down and stayed down out of the way.
I don't think it was enough of a hit to have made him go down the way he did.
No,
that's what I'm saying.
And I think you also, I think it was you, G, who said about the concussion protocol. If you'd been knocked out, we wouldn't have been seeing him last night. No, sorry, not last night. But he wouldn't have been. I don't think you'd have had his suspension available had he been unavailable through concussion. I think that would then moved on.
The other thing, Paul, your text to us that morning or that afternoon when you were watching the game, I think that's what G was getting at, was you basically said that the referees need to get hold of this game. You text us that, and we'd already watched it happen. We're thinking, because there was a hard foul on Mo in the first quarter. I can't think who it was. Was it Diallo in that one? And then, like you said, players are drawn at each other. But your text. You
could see it coming.
You could see it. Yeah, you're right.
You could see it coming. But I won't go into it, because I think what you're going to come on to about punishments and the like reflects to where I was going to kind of go next. But now, Mo caused it, but the referees also have a responsibility for me. Yeah.
No, definitely. Guys just mentioned suspensions came into effect last night. Now, the Magic had 8 players suspended, and they had to essentially have 5 of them miss last night's game, and then the remaining 3 are going to miss the game against Oklahoma City next week. So we saw Kevon Harris, Admiral Schofield, and Franz Wagner play yesterday, whilst the others sat out. They will not be available on Wednesday, I think it is, against the Thunder. But for me, I mean, the Magic bench, they got up. They got up to get him out. They didn't get up to escalate the issue. So I really think that the NBA needs to look at this properly. I mean, they have, but they should have taken a better view on it, especially, I mean, if you watch it back again, you watch Wendell Carter Jr. and Franz Wagner, and they just literally walking. They're not running to the spot. They're walking. They don't even get to the Detroit bench. So the fact that they've walked 3/4 of the court has basically meant they've got a 1-game suspension. So I just want to see what you think about, I mean, you've touched upon it there, the punishments handed out. You know, Diallo getting a game, Hayes getting 3 games, and the Magic bench getting 1. So are they fair? Mikey?
Yes. And
all of them?
Yeah. No, the only one I think's unfair is Killian Hayes, because he deserves more of a punishment than he got. Paul's point about the referees in the game, about they should have controlled that situation earlier than when it actually kicked off. I feel like the letter of the law, that the NBA rules about players not leaving the bench, I don't think you can change that, because if you start allowing that to happen again, situations like this could happen more frequently in other games, not just, do you know what I mean? So if you slacken, if you look back on that video and go, all right, Franz has walked up the floor, Bowles walked away from the situations, he's not got involved. I know he's obviously playing on the floor, but players aren't making the situation worse than it was, is what I'm getting at. Terence Ross didn't leave the bench. He was the only person that didn't out of all of them. I feel like if you said, watch the video back and go, well, this player didn't get involved and this player didn't get involved, then that's then telling the players that if something like this happens again in another game, if you don't get involved and make the situation worse, you can still leave the bench. Does that make sense? And by limiting the amount of players that get involved, you got a better chance of breaking it up before it really kicks off. So I don't think you can change the rule on that. I do think it was a little bit unfair. And obviously we're on the wrong side of it now, because we've had 8 players, or going to have 8 players suspended in 2 games. But from the other side of it, you got to think from the Pistons' point of view, as a Magic player that's actually started it, yet they've had 2 players kicked out the game. Now, I don't actually think Diallo really did a lot. I think he just come in, he's bumped him. I think the punch has actually made the situation worse, and Diallo really doing a lot. I think he's just making a point, sticking up for his own player, which...
But that's escalated it. This is the issue. They escalated it, not us.
But it's a bump. I don't think it was as much. I don't think it was all that, personally. I don't know. In terms of like Wagner, fine. You can't really argue. He had to get suspended. You could argue possibly he could have deserved another game. He's created this situation, but Hayes throwing a punch, whether he caught him properly with his forearm or his fist, it doesn't matter. He's thrown a punch. That deserves more than a 3-game suspension for me. The others you can't really argue with. I don't think so anyway.
Okay. Paul?
I agree with Mikey. I don't think you can argue with any of the suspensions except Killian Hayes. I think I can see the idea that it's ridiculous that we get players suspended for effectively rubbernecking, because that's all they're doing. They've gone down to have a look. Franz has gone to have a look. He's done nothing. But if that's all you're going to do, why get off the bench? If that's what you're going to do, just wander down to have a look. Well, you've clearly got control of your emotions, because you're not rushing to react to get involved and pull people away, or have a few words. Then why leave in the first place? So I can understand, and I do agree that you can't have the situation where it's okay for players to come wandering down and leave the bench. I think that the rule is badly written when you actually look at the situation that developed. The rule was clearly written for issues on the court. So you don't want both benches rushing in onto the court to get involved in something that's happened during play or off the ball or whatever. However, where this situation has happened on another team's bench, it can't be fair that every single member of their staff and every single member of their playing team can get involved at the risk of no suspension unless they happen to throw a punch or grab somebody around the neck or do something further. That's where it's badly written. So I do think that the NBA have to revisit the rule as a result, because you can't have, you can understand where the Magic players have gone down because Mo is completely outnumbered. You can understand why they've gone to protect and help their teammate. But if all you're allowed is the couple of players who are on the court to go across, he's still heavily outnumbered and it can escalate further. So I can understand where our players have got banned. I do think it's by the letter of law, and I think that rule is actually a good rule. I think it's ultimately needing rewriting to cover an issue on some team's bench, and that your players don't get involved either on the bench. You can't have it.
Gary?
Yeah, I think obviously Paul and Mikey's covered it way better than I ever could. Very eloquent fellas. I'd do it really. If I was taking one positive out of a very negative situation, it's the fact that the team actually did go down.
Yeah,
that's a the group. So I'd be more worried if there'd been a load of players sat on the other end going, "Oh, what's going on down there?" As potentially one of your players is getting filled in. That would suggest to me that you've got either a fragmented squad, which I don't think is the case, or you've got maybe characters in there who aren't going to be in. How can I put it? The bear pit with you going forward as a building block. You want to know what you want to know, the types of characters you've had. I've said it before. If you haven't got a certain number of people with a certain type of heart and a certain type of temperament on your bus, you might as well turn it around before you even leave to go to the game, or you aren't going to win. So we've got a history of having nice guys on the Magic overall, and I still do think we have. And when you look at people like Markelle Fultz getting a little bit angry, it's not really in his temperament, but I'm pleased that it actually is. I do think that the Killian Hayes should have got a longer suspension, and I'll just go back to that point of it's a 6'5" athlete swinging a punch from behind to the back of somebody's head. So review of the rules perhaps, but in terms of our guys getting suspended, ultimately Mo Wagner did start it. So yeah, there's got to be something comes from it. So yeah, that's my 2 cents, my penny.
Yeah. Nice. Right. So I thought I'd look into this a little bit, right? About times that people haven't been suspended when they've left the bench. Okay. So in 2018, the NBA Finals, Cleveland Cavalier player Kevin Love was not suspended for Game 2 of the 2018 Finals after the forward went onto the court for an incident. Okay, so that's one. Is that because it's the Finals? Perhaps. Is it because it's Kevin Love? I don't know.
Yeah.
Second example. The Suns played the LA Lakers in 2021 playoffs. LeBron James was not suspended, having broken protocols, and attended a tequila promotional event with COVID rules now. Okay? So, again, the NBA is bending the rules again. Okay? But, of course, Joe Dumas, ex-Piston player, throws the book at the Magic. Another one. LeBron James was not suspended whilst the Lakers were playing the Chicago Bulls at Staples Center last November, after there was an incident where Anthony Davis got his second technical, and LeBron entered the court in his street clothes, which would have been a technical foul. It was not called, and then he was not banned for the next game. So, is the NBA favouring certain players and certain teams and throwing a book at the Magic?
No.
But so why is LeBron allowed?
You can't, G.
all
You
these-
can't compare that situation.
It's not the same
to those.
situation. Not
You
the same
can't.
situation.
That you
But
just can't.
So what about the Kevin Love one?
It's not the same situation, mate. It's one player. It's not an entire bench.
But rules are rules. You can't bend the rules for one.
I don't think it is a bending of
All
the
right,
rules.
here's another question. What was the rule at the time?
I was about to ask that one.
I don't know if it's changed or
There you go.
But
you can't go back and change past history because the rules are changed now. No, but I know what you're saying. But look, no, the rules are the rules. That I do think they've made the right decisions, bar the law, and that's it. I think, like I said, the only debatable thing out of this situation is Killian Hayes, how long his suspension with.
I disagree on the whole Wendell and Franz Wagner thing because they literally walked. I know you guys have said you left the bench.
They left the bench. The rule is
no.
You leave
but
the bench.
you didn't escalate the problem. That's the issue.
That's not the rule.
None of
Their presence is another body at a situation.
But they didn't even get to the...
No, they were close enough, mate. I'm sorry. I think they were stupid. If they've got their emotions that much under control that they can just walk down slowly to have a look, then it's foolish.
Look, this happens.
However, they are in that area. They've left the bench. They are in that area, and if something had have gone further, they were in a position to react. So no, it's understandable for me, mate. I'm sorry. I think it's poor, and I can understand why we're all just really. But the fact they were present in the area. They did nothing, but they were present in the area. They don't have to escalate it; just have to be present, and they've left the bench.
And look, this
so LeBron and Thingy should have been suspended then because they left the bench. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Agenda? Is there a hidden agenda?
No, it just seems that he gets away with absolutely everything. But why should he be allowed to not be suspended if he's gone against the rules?
We were all annoyed at the time when and there was a general feeling in the NBA fandom that when LeBron broke the COVID rules, he should have been suspended, but wasn't because of who he is. And that was and the feeling was that it was simply because it was during the finals, and you want to see the best players involved in the finals. Was it right? Probably not. Is it the same situation as this one? No.
Look,
so
at the end of the day, like I said, if this happens on any other spot on the floor, this doesn't happen. It doesn't escalate like this. If this happens on the other side of the floor and Wagner bumps Killian Hayes into the crowd, the players on the floor are going to be the first ones on the scene, aren't they? Pulling players apart. Yeah, you might get a few punches thrown, but again, it's happened because of where it's happened is right in front of the Detroit bench. If it happens in front of the Magic bench, it doesn't happen. If it happens in the middle of the floor, like, just think of another, and I'm not comparing the situation, but you think back to last season when there was that situation with Nikola Jokic and was it Markieff Morris? We bumped him Markieff Morris hit him in the ribs, cheap shot. He turned his back and Jokic bumped him. He didn't bump him, he knocked his head off. But if that happens in front of, say, the Miami Heat bench at the time, that situation could get a lot uglier because you might see the Denver Nuggets players come to Jokic's defense, and do you know what I mean? So that has a part to play in this as well. But look, these rules are there for a reason. We all remember, well, certainly I do, and you probably do, Gary, the malice in the Palace back in 2004 with the Pistons and the Pacers, and how ugly that got really quickly. Obviously, fans got involved, and that's what made it worse. But before the fans got involved, every player was on the floor, coaches would get involved, and it got out of hand really quickly. And obviously, it really kicked off when Ron Artest got beer thrown at him. But at the end of the day, if you limit the amount of players that can get involved, then it doesn't escalate to the point where it gets to. Yeah, and that's it. I don't think you can change the rule. Like I said, I think it's unfortunate that it happened in front of the Pistons bench, and and that's that. But Gary's point about he actually likes the fact that players went there and stuck up for their teammates. I completely agree, because I love Admiral Schofield going in there, grabbing Caleb Houston and pulling him out, shoving him out of the way. And I think Kevon Harris did it as well. Like, they're two players that will stick up for you. So, yeah, it's good that they stuck together. They've all got each other's backs 100%, but the rules are the rules, and that's it for me.
If you're going to question about, but mate, if you're going to question about LeBron, I'd be more interested to know why you didn't go technical for the issue with our bench the other night, where the referees had to move him away.
Oh, don't start him off on that.
Well, again, I wasn't.
Mate,
I'm not
there's the call. Go on, peck away.
I'm not opening that can of worms there, because he just gets away with everything. And the sooner for me, I really don't like the guy, and the sooner he retires, the better for me. So I get he's seen as a good guy and everything, but yeah, I don't know. He's caused me pain and misery for too long.
Did you get a LeBron James a jersey for Christmas, G?
Absolutely not. No.
You're not. That's why you're a bit riled up about LeBron James.
Well, did you see him yesterday? He was
Secret Santa went wrong.
Screaming, "I'm the GOAT," and flexing after making a play against the Atlanta Hawks. Oh, sorry, mate. MJ's the GOAT. Anyway, and last thing on that point, Mikey mentioned about the Detroit Pistons, and it was quite funny to hear the PA announcer having to remind the fans to stay in their seats when this was unfolded. So I had a bit of a chuckle about that. Right, let's move on. So we got a bit of a mailbag this week, but before I get into that, and because we've been talking about Mo Wagner, everybody loves a villain. We all love Mo Wagner now, don't we? Let's be honest. But are there any other older Magic players in years gone by that you remember fondly for their ability to, ruffle some feathers? Gary?
Andrew de Klerk.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good one.
De Klerk's a good one. Anyone else?
Hey, I've not been around long enough, really, have I?
No.
Mate, the one it's not necessarily getting under somebody's skin, but I always enjoyed, I was a fan of DJ. I always enjoyed DJ Augustine being able to just put Trae Young off his game and get Trae Young angry. And he ended up with technicals, and it's just his game absolutely failed every time he played against DJ. And I enjoyed that.
Yeah. Two I had in mind. One was Scott Skiles, obviously from the early 90s, played with a chip on his shoulder. And the other one, Matt Barnes.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's that gif from him sort of faking the ball into Kobe's face, and then Kobe not even flinching. So bless him.
Is there any that you can think of that didn't play for the Magic against
the
Magic?
Didn't play against it.
Yeah, so my point.
And G won't like him, will he?
No, that's right.
Well, Patrick Beverley's pretty good.
Beverley.
Yeah.
Zaza Pachulia for the Hawks was a bit of a pest.
Ex-Magic. Pachulia.
Still don't like him.
Still don't like him.
Because he had a dust that was Jason Richardson in the playoffs, if I remember rightly, didn't he? Against the Hawks.
That's going back a bit now, isn't it?
I know.
That's going back a bit. Right, so mailbag time. And on this topic, we've got one from Angus Craig. Are the Pistons on the same hate level now as the LA Lakers and the Boston Celtics?
No.
Anyone?
We started it.
No.
We started it. It's their fault. Killian Hayes might be up there as one of them players that you're no longer going to have any respect for in any shape or form. But no.
The other thing as well, what have we done to Alec Burks? Why is it every single time we play him, he kills us? He should be on the hate list, but not the Pistons.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the Pistons aren't all that, are they? So there we go. So the next one has come from, forgive me if I pronounce this wrong, it's QHAR, Car, who is from Poland, who's got in touch with us via Twitter. So with potentially 2 new rookies joining the squad next year with the draft picks that we have, which players don't you think will be on the roster next year?
That's a tough one.
Terrence
it's a good one, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a good question.
RJ,
Yeah, RJ and T Ross, I think, are two. I could still see in some a Mo Bamba move. I could still see that happening.
Yeah.
And I think that you've got potential again of, it gets mentioned every time, but somebody like Gary Harris. And do we perhaps see either Jalen or Cole moved as part of deals? I suppose it all depends on where we end up picking and what position we consider that the best options are available for. It's a really difficult question. It's a really good question.
Yeah, I agree with you there, mate, on all those players. And obviously it depends where the, how the lottery pans out and where we pick. We might only take one player, we might trade one away. It's difficult to know, isn't it? Right, so an all-star kind of question now. Which non-Magic players deserve an all-star spot beyond the obvious that we get every year? And secondly, how do you guys pick when you vote? Do you go for X players? Do you pick a particular team? Or is it on form? You go to Mikey first.
Right, this is a deep question, really. This is quite a long question. Which players deserve a spot? So are we naming our 5 from the East and West? Should we do that first?
Oh, cool.
Is
I wish
that
I'd
the
thought
easiest
of
way to do it?
Oh gosh, now you're putting us on the spot.
Jeez.
That wasn't on the agenda.
All right.
Wow,
Well,
all right.
I'll go. I'll go. Favorite player: Ja Morant deserves a spot. Luka Doncic deserves a spot. Giannis, Jason Tatum, Curry, KD. I won't mention LeBron because clearly somebody's already upset about him today.
So you've just unveiled who put that tweet out then from our account.
Oh yeah, that was
whose all-star selection is this?
I was interested to see if anyone could figure it out.
Well, somebody guessed Paul, and I was thinking, no, it's not Paul. He wouldn't go for LeBron.
Well, you saw my answer. I'm
Yeah.
not picking anybody wearing the purple and gold.
And I know
I don't
G's
care how
not
good
gonna.
they're playing.
Yeah. I know G's not going to agree, but LeBron is playing out of his skin at the moment.
I thought
For a
LeBron played brilliantly against us.
Exactly, and the Lakers are down Anthony Davis, so he's got an extra weight on his shoulders to carry. Yeah, they haven't got the best record in the West at the moment, but he's keeping them afloat. The guy's, 37, 38? You see the points that he put up last night on his birthday. I mean, the guy is a freak, and he's still playing really well. So for me, he's always going to get an all-star spot because it's LeBron James, and he's one of the more popular players amongst most fans. That doesn't include Geraint. Yeah, I don't know. I tend to go for favourite players with a little bit of current form sprinkled in there as well.
Yeah, mate. I'm East side. I'm always going to pick somebody from the Magic if I can. This year, there's obviously Paolo and Franz. I've dropped in a few Wendells and I've dropped in a few Bol as well. However, if you're talking genuinely who deserve, some of them who genuinely deserve, it's hard to look beyond Embiid. He's been playing brilliantly. Giannis, yeah, Luka is in there. You know full well that I'm putting Steph in every single time. I think that, I find it harder when it comes to the West. I will sometimes look and see, is there ex-Magic players who I can vote for? But I'm not voting for anybody who is either wearing the purple and gold or a certain green kit. Not a chance. Don't care how well you're playing.
There's one I forgot to list. One that definitely deserves to start is Zion.
Yeah, he's having a good season. Gary?
Right, mine's again great points. I feel as though I'm coming in at the end and I'm like, oh god, these two guys are just like wiping the floor with me. There it is. Just that the player who I think deserves to be on the All-Star team more than anyone this year and this is maybe controversial, but it's Tyrese Halliburton. I think, like, okay, Indiana's leveled out a bit, but if you look at what Halliburton's doing, he is performing at like elite level starter for me. So I would put Giannis in because I love him. I would put Halliburton in. I think Jason Tatum's got a real shout for MVP if he keeps up playing the way he is.
Yeah.
I am very much a traditional centre guy, so Joel Embiid would go in. Just because I'm biased, I would try to find a way to get Paolo in, but I know you can't do it. But that's who I would want there, but I can't. And then I'm going to put Steph in. I'm going to put Luka in. I'm going to put Zion in. I'm going to put LeBron in. Sorry, G, but I do think he's a top 5 player in the West still. And I would put Jokic in because I just think that does not get the respect he deserves as a player. He's unreal. He's absolutely unreal. So that'll be my guys. I know I can't put Paolo in, so I don't know who the other player would be because I've been voting for him all the time. But that's where I would stand. But Tyrese Halliburton has to go into the game for me if he keeps going as he is.
Yeah, no, all good shouts there. I mean, the only ones I'd add to that, Lauri Markkanen has been playing out of his skin for the Utah Jazz. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's been having a good season for OKC. Mikey's mentioned Zion. But when it comes to me, I don't vote those players. I vote 5 Magic players every time. And I've also got a little deal going on with OKC, whereas I vote OKC, the other 5 for the West, and they vote the Magic ones. So basically, I'm doubling the votes for us. So every time I do it, and OKC does it, I get 2 votes. So that's the way I do it. But in seasons gone by, I have looked at, previous players, like Aaron Gordon, Nick Vucevic, somebody, if there's not a Magic player available, I'll pick an X player, shall we say. But no, so everyone remember to vote, though. See if we can get Paolo or Franz or Markel or Cole in. Yeah. That'd be good, but we're not holding much hope, let's be perfectly honest.
So basically, when you get people like Charles Barkley go on rants that fans shouldn't vote for All-Star, me and G voting for 5 Magic players every vote is the reason why. But there we go.
Basically, isn't it? Basically. Right, so just have a quick look at the week ahead. So we're recording our next episode on Friday, the 6th of January. Between that time and now, the Magic play the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Memphis Grizzlies at home, which will conclude our homestand before we go out on a long West Coast road trip. Oklahoma are 15-20 for the season, 5-12 on the road. Magic are 9-11 at home currently. The Grizzlies are 21-13 in the West, good for 3rd, and are 8-10 on the road. Now, I think they've had a couple of losses in the last couple of weeks, and I know there was a mention in the NBA UK fans chat that people are starting to get a little bit annoyed about the Grizzlies and how cocky they've become. Would you agree with that, gentlemen?
Yes.
Yeah. Look, I think that there's a couple of players on there who are absolutely brilliant, but they just need to wind their attitude in a little bit. Yeah, 100%.
Definitely. Yeah. Was it the Christmas Day game? They were all dancing and all that before they came on the court, and they got into
that's not the thing I have a problem with. I don't have a problem with them coming on with a swagger.
Because Phoenix were doing this last year as well.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. It's more
the petulance and
I'd just like to see a little bit less arrogance on when you score, and some of the flexings and bits and bobs like that.
Yeah, just run back on defense. Yeah. No, definitely.
Until you've won something.
Yeah.
So how are we feeling for these 2 games then? Oklahoma and Memphis, obviously short-handed against the Thunder. And then we should have everybody back, fingers crossed, for the Grizzlies. And we've got 4 days off. So what are you expecting?
Got to go Gary first.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to go, unfortunately, 0-2. I don't want to say that, but That's the way I'm leaning towards it. I just think we're not going to beat the Grizzlies. I'd like to be proven wrong because I'm a guy who's been here for a while on the Grizzlies with what Paul's just been saying there. I didn't want them to win in the playoffs last season either. And I like the players they've got. I just can't be doing with the attitude. But I think we might go 0-2, and then we've got a few things to figure out going forward. But there you go. Sorry.
Well,
if it wasn't for suspensions, I could see us potentially taking the OKC game because of their road record. But SGA is just a talent. The boy's on fire. Now, 1-1. We beat OKC.
Michael?
I don't know.
You got to be different now. You got to go 2-0, mate.
I can't see that.
What does that leave you, G? That both games are abandoned.
Yeah. I would like to say 2-0, but I can't see us beating the Grizzlies. I mean, the Grizzlies are 6-4 in the last 10, but the 4 teams that they've lost to is the Thunder, the Nuggets, the Warriors, and the Suns. So it's three really good teams, and OKC are obviously having a better year. But I'm going to go 0-2.
All right, I'll join Paul with 1-1. I think we've got enough to beat Oklahoma City. You think about the suspensions, obviously, Mo Wagner, France is going to be a big loss. But we have seen Admiral and Kevon in street clothes for a lot of the time because obviously they're a two-way situation. So we should have, enough firepower to get by them.
I think we'll have 10 available for the Thunder game, and that's without Suggs, Chuma, or JI being available. So
yeah, and you never know.
We're still 10 then.
Still 10.
So then, thank you as always for listening and watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Orlando Magic UK and leave us your comments. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at Orlando Magic UK. So from Gary, Paul, Mikey, and myself, we wish you have a happy new year. And until next time, go Magic.